This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
We're working to connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
Hello and welcome to ASEAN in Focus. Joining me today is from our EBC Cambodia Bureau. Hello, Crystal.
Hi, Alma. Happy Monday. I'm Crystal Ann Ballesteros, EBC Cambodia Bureau, bringing you the news in the dynamic ASEAN region.
On today's headlines. Myanmar security forces opened fire on protesters, killing at least 8 in the bloodiest action so far to smother the opposition to the military coup 4 weeks ago.
Thai police shot rubber bullets and used water cannon and tear gas against pro-democracy protesters in Bangkok.
And the Philippines kicked off its COVID-19 vaccination campaign with shots to be administered to some frontline healthcare workers at the University of the Philippines, Philippine General Hospital, and top government officials, an effort meant to boost public confidence in vaccination.
Despite calls for him to be the first to be inoculated to boost vaccine confidence among the public presidents, Rodrigo Duterte on Sunday insisted to wait for his physician's advice on which vaccine brands to get.
First to Myanmar, where security forces opened fire on protesters, killing at least 8 in the bloodiest action so far to smother the opposition to the military coup 4 weeks ago. The junta is battling to contain a massive street movement demanding it yield power and release ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi, who was detained along with top political allies at the start of the month. Sunday brought a significant escalation in force, with fatal shootings of protesters in at least 4 cities around the country as police and soldiers attempted to bring the civil disobedience campaign to heel. The United Nations condemned the deadly crackdown and said it had received credible information that as many as 18 people may have been killed. AFP could not independently confirm the UN toll. 3 men were killed and at least 20 others injured when security forces moved on a rally in the southern coastal hub of Dawei. Rescue worker Piai Zhao Hein said the trio were shot dead with live rounds, while the injured were hit by rubber bullets. 2 teenagers were gunned down in Bago, a 2-hour drive north of the commercial capital Yangon. Ambulance driver Tan Nguyen Do said that he had sent the bodies of the 18-year-olds to the mortuary at Bago's main hospital. Officers in Yangon began dispersing small crowds minutes before the slated beginning of the day's protest, with a 23-year-old man also shot dead in the city's east. In Mandalay, meanwhile, an emergency doctor told AFP that 2 men had died from gunshot wounds. Elsewhere, protesters took up positions behind barricades and wielded homemade shields to defend themselves against the onslaught, with police using tear gas to clear some rallies. Hundreds of people had been arrested by evening and transported to the city's notorious insane prison, where many of Myanmar's leading democracy campaigners have served long jail terms under previous dictatorships. At least one journalist documenting Sunday's assaults by security forces was beaten and detained further north in Yityikna, a city at the headwaters of the Irrawaddy River, according to local outlet The 74 Media. Another reporter was shot with rubber bullets while covering a protest in the central city of Piay, according to its employer. A spokesman for the ruling junta did not respond to phone calls seeking comment on Sunday's violence. Before Sunday, at least 5 people had died in anti-coup unrest since the army takeover, including 3 killed on February 20. One police officer also died while attempting to quell a protest, according to the military.
Another news, Winwin O was facing security forces hiding behind a handmade shield when he was hit by a live round in the southern coastal hub of Dawei. The junta is battling to contain a massive street movement demanding it build power and release ousted civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi, who was detained along with top political allies at the start of the month. Since the February 1 military takeover, Myanmar has been rolled by giant demonstrations and the civil disobedience campaign encouraging civil servants to walk off the job. Images from Myanmar's local media show his body being carried away from the protest site and people trying to resuscitate him. He was 33 and is one of the 3 confirmed shot dead in Dawei. Human Rights Watch said medical volunteers helping to treat wounded protesters were also being targeted for arrest by security forces. More than 850 people have been arrested, charged, or sentenced since the coup, according to the Assistance Association for Political Prisoners Monitoring Group.
Meanwhile, the European Union diplomatic chief, Joseph Borrell, condemned a military crackdown in Myanmar and confirmed the bloc would adopt sanctions in response. Violence will not give legitimacy to the illegal overthrowing of the democratically elected government in Myanmar, Borrell said in a statement. In shooting against unarmed citizens, the security forces have shown a blatant disregard for international law and must be held to account. The UN Rights Office also said at least 18 people were killed, several wounded, and hundreds arrested Sunday when security forces dispersed pro-democracy demonstrations in Myanmar. It marks the bloodiest action so far to smother opposition to the country's military coup 4 weeks ago. The European Union will take measures in response to these developments shortly, Borrell said. European ministers have already agreed on sanctions against Myanmar's military over the coup and have declined to withhold some development aid. The sanctions are expected to be finalized in the coming days and will take effect once an official notice has been published by the EU.
Myanmar's UN envoy appealed to the international community Friday to reject a military coup in his country. He asked them to use any means necessary to protect the people. Moton said the military continues to act with impunity as it deploys violence against the peaceful protesters.
Mr. President, Excellencies, in addition to the existing support, we need further strongest possible action from the international community to immediately end the military coup, to stop oppressing the innocent people, to return the state power to the people, and to restore the democracy.
I told you in 2019 that I would sound the alarm if necessary. This is now the case. I'm ringing the alarm bells. I strongly condemn the recent steps taken by the military and urge all of you to collectively send a clear signal in support of democracy in Myanmar. The military exploited difference to try to justify an attempted coup. I say attempted Since the takeover has not stabilized, it would appear to be roundly rejected by the people. It is important the international community does not lend legitimacy or recognition to this regime.
People from all strata of life have come out on the streets all over the country and expressed their disappointment with the military coup, as well as demanded the immediate release of all detainees and return of the state power to the people through the elected government. The people of Myanmar are resolute for achieving the demands. I agree with the Secretary General that the military is not acceptable. The military coup is not acceptable in this modern world, and the coup must fail.
Now, after that, Myanmar's junta fired its UN ambassador Saturday for breaking the ranks and denounce the military's ouster of civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi as police stepped up a crackdown on protesters across the country. In justifying its seizure of power, the military has alleged widespread fraud in the November elections, which Suu Kyi's party won in a landslide, and promised fresh polls in a year. But its ambassador to the United Nations on Friday broke ranks and made an emotional appeal to the international community for the strongest possible action to restore democracy. By Saturday night, state-run TV announced that Kyaw Mo Chun was no longer Myanmar's UN ambassador. He didn't follow the order and direction by the state and betrayed the country. That is why he is revoked from his position starting from today, according to an MRTV broadcast.
Earlier on same day, MRTV also broadcast the arrival of more than 1,000 Myanmar nationals deported from Malaysia despite a court order halting the repatriation. The migrants, whom activists say include vulnerable asylum seekers, receive a hero's welcome at Yangon's Navy Port, attended by military families and officials. Some of the returnees include ethnic minorities from Rakhine and Kachin states who may have protection concerns, said John Finley of Fortify Rights. The migrants, who activists say include vulnerable asylum seekers, departed Tuesday on Myanmar Navy ship from a Malaysian military base. The United States, which under President Joe Biden have ramped up refugee admissions and sought to rally pressure to reverse Myanmar's coup, said it was concerned by the move by Malaysia. State Department spokesman Ned Price said that the military in Myanmar, also known as Burma, has a long documented history of human rights abuses against members of religious and ethnic minority groups. Price noted that Malaysia went ahead in spite of a Malaysian court order barring their deportation and in light of ongoing arrests in Burma that, of course, has been taking place since the coup.
Meanwhile, outside Myanmar, civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi, who has not been seen since last month's military coup, is due to face court on Monday after a deadly weekend crackdown against relentless democracy protests. The Assistance Association for Political Prisoners, a reliable monitoring group, estimated that about 30 people have been killed by security forces since the coup on February 1. Now, Ms. Suu Kyi, 75, was detained before dawn on that day and hasn't been seen since in public since. Now, the military has justified its takeover, ending a decades-long democratic movement or experiment by making unfounded allegations of widespread fraud in last November's national elections. Now, Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy won the election in a landslide. The generals have hit Suu Kyi with 2 charges the international community widely regards as frivolous, relating to importing walkie-talkies and then staging a campaign rally during the pandemic. Suu Kyi is reported to be being held in Naypyidaw, the isolated capital city that the military built during a previous dictatorship. Suu Kyi's lawyer, Kin Mong Zhao, told AFP he had not been able to speak to her ahead of Monday's scheduled court hearing, which is for preliminary matters and where she may appear only via video link. He also said he hoped the court would formally approve his status as her defense lawyer.
Meanwhile, Thai police shot rubber bullets and used water cannon and tear gas against pro-democracy protesters in Bangkok. Here's Crystal Mapa to give us more details.
Yes, hi Crystal, you are right. Thai police shot rubber bullets and used water cannon and tear gas against pro-democracy protesters in Bangkok Sunday at a rally outside a military barracks housing the Prime Minister's residence. A youth-led protest movement calling for the resignation of Prayut Chan-o-cha's government had lost steam in recent months following a second wave of coronavirus infections in Thailand. But the recent detention of 4 prominent protest leaders on royal defamation charges has given it a shot in the arm. The 4 are among 58 protesters facing lèse majesty charges and the prospect of up to 15 years in jail per charge if convicted of insulting the monarchy. An estimated 2,000 demonstrators marched from the major Bangkok intersection Victory Monument on Sunday to a nearby military barracks where Prayut lives. Among the protesters were scores of migrant workers from neighboring Myanmar rallying against the coup that ousted civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi on February 1st. Some Thai protesters marched wearing hard hats and carried red flags. Hundreds later pushed through shipping containers and barbed wire barricades, leading to a confrontation with riot police guarding the entrance of the barracks. Scuffles broke out between riot squad officers and protesters, while some demonstrators were seen pushing a police truck. And I quote, "They are preparing everything, shields, baton, water with some chemical and rubber bullets," one protester at the front line told Thai media. Amid the tense standoff, officers used water cannon trucks and let off tear gas in attempt to disperse the crowd. The first use of force, albeit non-lethal, at a Bangkok rally for several months. Protesters shouted for water and saline as they were sprayed. Some wore raincoats while others held their bare hands in the air or raised 3 fingers, a symbol of resistance. Officers later shot rubber bullets, according to an AFP journalist on the ground. "It doesn't hurt too much," a protester told Thai media, showing a red mark on his arm. Some protesters threw glass bottles, rocks, and bricks at officers, while others took refuge inside a nearby Shell petrol station, which later closed early. Despite protest organizers sending a social media message at around 8:30 p.m. local time, urging demonstrators to go home, scores stuck around, many on motorbikes playing a cat-and-mouse game with advancing police. Erawan Emergency Medical Center said 16 protesters were injured and a riot squad police officer lost consciousness. A nurse at Rajaviti Hospital told AFP the officer died but would not elaborate on the circumstances. At least 2 protesters were arrested, according to a live Facebook feed. However, police have not confirmed the total number. Thai lawyers for human rights said 19 were arrested, including a 16-year-old. A small group of protesters continued to clash with officers outside Dindang police station after midnight in the wee hours of Monday morning. Thailand's pro-democracy movement kicked off last July, and its peak attracted tens of thousands of mostly young people. Among the movement's demands are a rewrite of the army-drafted constitution and reforms to the monarchy, a taboo-smashing stipulation in a country where the ultra-wealthy royal family has long been untouchable. Back to you, Crystal.
Thank you, Crystal. and be safe there.
Thank you. Reporting live from Thailand, this is Crystal Mapa. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Crystal. Crystal and I will be back with more news right after this break.
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Your weekly dose of entrepreneurial inspiration to update you on the latest developments in the world of business. Get up close and personal with CEOs and thought leaders to help you discover valuable insights, sharpen your instincts for smart decision making with the latest markets and economic trends, disruptive ideas, global innovation, social entrepreneurship, and other leading-edge business ideas. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business, from vision to action.
Mapupuno ng saya, impormasyon at inspirasyon ang hapon mo sa Afternoon Power. Handog sa inyo ng Net25. Sasabay sa inyong tanghalian ang inyong Happy Time Barkada at 12 noon. Alamin ang mga pangyayari sa ASEAN nations, ASEAN in Focus at 2 p.m. Ang inyong paboritong awit komentaryo kasama si Leo Obligar sa Piskante ng Bayan. At mga balita sa iba't ibang panig ng bansa, hatid sa atin sa Aguila Probinsya. Siksik ang hapon mo mula Lunes hanggang Biyernes, ang inyong Afternoon Power sa Net25.
Back to the news. The Philippines received 600,000 vaccine doses from China on Sunday, kickstarting the country's inoculation drive. President Duterte oversaw the delivery of the doses at a military airbase. Let's listen in.
We are gathered here to receive the generous donation of 600,000 vaccines from the People's Republic of China. And this comes at much needed time as the Philippines is preparing to face the Herculean task of mounting the largest ever immunization program in terms of scale in our history.
To my fellow Filipinos, please set your fears aside. These vaccines are backed by science and deliberated on by our expert, Filipino experts. I encourage you to get vaccinated at the soonest possible time and be a partner in preventing the further spread of the disease.
25,000 doses of AstraZeneca jab distributed as part of the global COVAX global inoculation program were also supposed to arrive Monday, but Health Secretary Francisco Duque later said the shipment will be delayed for a week due to global supply problems. The regulator didn't recommend CoronaVac for healthcare workers due to its comparatively low efficacy. An advisory group to the Philippine government allowed it to be offered to those willing to take it. The rollout came as the number of daily new infections in the Philippines hit a 4-month high. More than 570,000 cases have been confirmed, including over 12,000 deaths. Aside from hospital workers, the military is set to receive 100,000 doses. Members of the Philippines Armed Forces are required to get vaccinated, and those who refuse could be disciplined. Sinovac's CoronaVac is the third COVID-19 vaccine brand, aside from Pfizer, BioNTech, and AstraZeneca, granted an emergency use authorization by the country's Food and Drug Administration. From Villamor Air Base, the vaccine would be transported to cold storage facilities, including at the Philippine General Hospital and the Metro Pack Logistics in Marikina City. According to the Chinese Embassy in Manila, Sinovac has also secured an EUA in almost 20 countries, and that includes China, Cambodia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Turkey, Brazil, Chile, Mexico, and Colombia.
The Philippines kicked off its COVID-19 vaccination campaign on Monday morning, with shots to be administered to some frontline healthcare workers at the University of the Philippines, Philippine General Hospital or UPPGH, and top government officials, an effort meant to boost public confidence in vaccination.
Pero nakita naman natin after the town hall meeting, nakita po ng mga 1,000 mahigit po nag-attend ng town hall meeting. Nalinawagan na unang-una may choice. In-announce dun po kasi sa meeting na yon ng ASEAN ay darating, kaya talagang nagkaroon ng malaking luwag ng damdamin na ang mga tao ay naintindihan na may choice. Pangalawa, ito po'y voluntaryo. No? So, kailangan ho natin talagang idiin na ito'y voluntaryo dahil hindi po siya, hindi pwedeng ipilit kahit kanino ang ayaw niya. No? Ang pangkalahatang response ng ating mga kasama sa PGH ay nag-i-improve habang tumatagal po. No? Like kung sinasabi po, maswerte tayo, pinaliligiran tayo ng mga scientists at mga researchers at ang ating mga datos ay unang lumalabas at na-evaluate natin. That's why we were nakadesisyon ho tayo sa Sinovac base sa siyensya, no?
Ako, hindi lang po infectious disease, kung hindi po, ako rin po director ng Institute of Molecular Biology and Biotechnology sa NIH, na isa sa pinakaunang RT-PCR laboratory po aside from the subnational labs ng DOH. So from the diagnostics po until the therapeutics, nag-aalaga rin po ako ng mga pasyenteng may COVID-19. At yun nga po, sa pagbabakuna, pinag-aralan ko po yan lahat. Kasama po ako ng technical advisory group na may access rin po dun sa mga, even the confidential papers po. At sa pag-aaral po namin, itong Sinovac, yung 50.4% is the efficacy for mild. But it is 78% efficacious for moderate and 100% efficacious for severe COVID-19. Alam na po natin, yung impact ng ganitong bakuna will save lives. For example po, 2.5 million people na ang namatay sa COVID ngayon. Kung meron tayong bakunang ganito, katulad ng Sinovac, kung dineploy natin yan at the start of the pandemic, hindi po lalampas ng 1,000 yung namatay.
The first dose of China's Sinovac-made coronavac vaccine was given to UPPGH Director Dr. Gerardo Legaspi. He was vaccinated by nurse Sherla Cruz. Legaspi's colleague Dr. Edsel Salvania, Director of the Institute of Molecular Biology and Biotechnology at UP National Institute of Health, was the second person to get vaccinated. Earlier, UPPGH spokesperson Dr. Jonas Del Rosario said close to 10% of UPPGH workers said they are willing to receive the coronavac vaccine, while 90% said they preferred a different job. Government officials who have lined up to get vaccinated with coronavac are Vaccine Czar Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr., Food and Drug Administration Director General Eric Domingo, Metropolitan Manila Development Authority Chair Benhur Abalos, and Presidential Spokesperson Harry Roque. All vaccine recipients will be observed for either 15 or 30 minutes after vaccination.
Meanwhile, PGH spokesperson Dr. Jonas Del Rosario also said he will get the Sinovac jab amid concerns over the effectiveness of this vaccine. He assured the public of the vaccine's safety and efficacy. Let's listen in.
Ngayon, bakit Sinovac para sa akin? Ito pong Sinovac ay, ang kanyang methodology ay tinatawag na traditional. Ano ibig sabihin ko? Kunin mo yung virus, i-activate mo. Tatanggalin mo yung mga katangiang masama nito. Parang bala, tinanggal mo yung pulbura. So, inactivated virus at yun ilalagay mo sa katawan mo. No? Yun po ang ginagamit ng mga dati pang bakuna, kamukha ng polio, ng rubella, ng measles. No? Yung ibang brand, ganito naman nangyayari. Sa DNA, meron silang encode sa RNA, kakain sa protina ng DNA. High-tech po yun. No? Pero hindi ko talaga alam. Yun ay way ko po. Dito na po, para sa akin na po, it's your choice. Ha? Para sa akin, dito na ako sa traditional. No? Dahil subok na po ito. Pangalawa, sa Turkey po, 92% po effective ito sa normal and healthy na tao. Bakit nagkaroon ng issue? Kasi po, yung nilabas na 50.4% efficacy. Anong ibig sabihin nito? Ibig sabihin yung 50.4 na bakuna, talagang hindi tinablan. No, talagang effective siya. Eh yung 49.6, ano nangyari? Yung 49.6, 100% sa kanila walang namatay, walang umabot sa severe cases. Yun po ang findings, no? Klinaro ko nga humaigi ito. At hindi lang yung kulang-kulang 80%, halos baliwala eh. Halos okay, ano lang ho eh. Talagang lahat, talagang baliwala na halos, no? Halos asymptomatic pa nga yata. Yun ang pagkakaintindi ko, no? Kasi yun ang nakalista sa literature. In short, no, kung titignan po natin, walang mawawala sa atin para sa akin. No? At hindi lamang yun. Yung 50.4% na sinasabi, ito lang po ay talagang sa mga doktor at nurses.
Yes po.
Clinical trials. At ito ho, take note, wala yatang gumawang ibang kumpanya na exclusively for doctors and nurses na ganong clinical except Sinovac. Hinahaluan nila. Kaya ganon. Inuulit ko, for healthy individuals sa Turkey, it's 92%. At ang clinical trials naman, exclusively for doctors and nurses, is 50.4%. Ay para sa pamilya ninyo, para sa bayan, para sa atin po ito. Importante mo ang magpabakuna kaagad for the herd immunity.
Meanwhile, Secretary Harry Roque answered Vice President Leni Robredo's and Senator Kiko Pangilinan call-in calling for a further review on the COVID-19 vaccine developed by China-based Sinovac.
And we included that, and I remember the discussions in Congress, in the 17th Congress on HTAC. HTAC was never intended to have the same function as the Food and Drug Administration. Pagdating po sa issue ng ligtas at epektibo, yung decision po ng FDA remains. Bakit ba po kami nag-provide ng provision yan doon sa panukalang batas? Kasi importante po na masala natin kung ano yung essential services na ibibigay natin sa taong bayan na libre, ano yung non-essential na mga services at gamot. Hindi po natin ginawang intensyon sa batas na yan na maghuhusga ang HTAG sa naging naunang husga na ng FDA. At ipaglalaban ko po yan dahil ako naman po ang nagsulong ng Universal Healthcare Law. So tama po, nakasaad po doon, meron silang rekomendasyon kung bibilin gamit ang pondo ng taong bayan. But the decision is still the decision of the Secretary of Health. Okay, I hope that is clear. At dahil ako naman po ang nagsulong niyan sa mababang kapulungan sa Kongreso at nauna kami sa mababang kapulungan ng 1 taon o 2 taon bago naipasa ng Senado yung version nila, eh siguro naman po, you can give me some credit na I know what I speak of.
Despite calls for him to be the first inoculated to boost vaccine confidence among the public, President Rodrigo Duterte on Sunday insisted to wait for his physician's advice on which vaccine brand to get. In a press conference during the arrival of the initial 600,000 doses of China-made Sinovac COVID-19 vaccine donated by China to the Philippines, Duterte said he could not receive the said vaccine because it is not recommended for senior citizens. Duterte turned 76 on March 28.
Have you talked to the medical
people. Kami yung mga 70, we have to be careful. Ako naman, may doktor ako sarili. She thinks that another brand, I will not mention it, yun na lang ang hinintay ko. Sabi niya, hinintay ko. Sabi ko, but I cannot just out of the vaccine simply because I have to take care of my age. I will be 77 next year. Next month. Ano bang problema nila sa bakuna na talaga magpabakuna man ako? If I do not want to die and get COVID, I should get one. I go around a lot. I meet so many people on any given trip outside. Bakit dadramahin pa yan? Sino mauna? Ako magpabakuna. Ang problema, ang doktor ko may hinihintay. Now, on the issue of itong mga health workers, merong dadating. They have a choice.
The initial 600,000 doses of Sinovac-made COVID-19 vaccine donated by China to the Philippines arrived in the country on Sunday afternoon. Frontline healthcare workers are the first in the government's vaccination priority list. However, only a small percent of medical frontliners have expressed willingness to receive the China-made vaccine. Duterte assured frontline healthcare workers that they will also be given the option of receiving the COVID-19 vaccine brand of their choice. ASEAN in Focus will be right back.
Factual.
We have to defeat the virus everywhere.
Timely information. Balanced. Not only in the country, but also abroad.
I'm certain of one thing.
Interviews that people need to know. Watch Agila Pilipinas. A one-hour newscast of reports coming from regional hubs in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Know the important updates in Asia in ASEAN in Focus. Track the latest stories in the provinces in Agila Provincia. Tune into Mata ng Agila, the evening primetime news program of Net25. Balanced and objective, Mata ng Agila covers national and international issues, tackles news on business, health, science and technology, entertainment, sports and human interest features, and current events. And Eagle News International delivers the latest global reports, impartial, accessible, and up-to-date. It brings to fore EBC's rich international scope and access to valuable information streams.
Well, thank you to Elaine, our help outdoor track.
Catch these programs on Net25. You can also watch our news programs through eaglenews.ph and Eagle News Facebook page and YouTube channel.
Welcome back. Back in the Philippines, President Duterte said he is considering placing the entire country under the least restrictive modified general community quarantine as soon as the country gets enough COVID-19 vaccine doses. The president, who personally witnessed the arrival of the initial 600,000 vaccine doses of Sinovac's CoronaVac vaccines to the Philippines, said he needed to reopen the economy because many Filipinos are suffering. It was unclear when he would downgrade the current quarantine status to MGCQ, but noted that it would be when vaccines are available to anybody. However, the president said he would not allow yet face-to-face classes, even in areas with low risk of COVID-19 infection. As when he expects the country to reach pre-pandemic levels, the president said herd immunity might be reached about 2 years from now. Meanwhile, equities rose in Asia on Monday as investors took a breather following last week's heavy selling, with a drop in U.S. Treasury yields giving markets some much-needed stability, while the passage of Joe Biden's stimulus through the House provided some cheer. However, observers warned that trading floors were still gripped by fears the expected global economic recovery will fuel inflation and force a hike in interest rates earlier than previously thought, removing a key pillar of the surge in the world markets for the past year. In a bid to calm markets, several central banks, including in Japan, South Korea, and the European Union, sought at the weekend and reiterated their pledges to maintain their ultra-loose monetary policies for as long as needed. Australia's led the way by ramping up its asset purchases to keep government yields low. The steep losses last week provided an opportunity for bargain buyers Monday, sending Asia rallying with Tokyo up more than 2%, while Hong Kong and Sydney put on more than 1%. Shanghai, Singapore, Jakarta, and Manila also enjoyed healthy gains. Seoul and Taipei were closed for the holidays.
Filipino pharmaceutical firm Glovax Biotech has partnered with the Korean vaccine manufacturer to produce the Ucorvac 19 in the Philippines. Should the government purchase 40 million doses of the COVID-19 vaccine? In a statement, Glovax said it is in talks with the Department of Trade and Industry and the Board of Investment for the possible investment for next-generation COVID-19 vaccine production facility. Should the government order 40 million doses of the vaccine, the company will invest 7 billion pesos for the manufacturing plant and technology transfer costs, said Glovax. The first and only company that brought the vaccine to the country during the AH1N1 swine flu pandemic in 2009 to 2010. The local COVID-19 vaccine plant is capable of producing 100 million doses of next-generation COVID-19 vaccine annually and could help in alleviating our burden of waiting for other countries' excess supply, Glovax added. The company said National Task Force Against COVID-19 Chief Implementer and Vaccine, Carlito Galvez Jr., has endorsed Glovax to the Department of Science and Technology. The pharma firm will be partnering with Korean firm Ubiologics to locally produce Ucorvac 19, which was developed in the United States by Pop Biotechnology. Ucorvac 19 will be initially produced in South Korea before expanding in other markets like the Philippines.
Indian pharmaceutical companies want to expand their presence in the Philippines, but stringent domestic laws become barriers for them to enter and be competitive in the local market. In a joint webinar of the Federation of Indian Chambers and Commerce and the Indian Business Forum Philippine Association, or IBF Director Asim Roy have mentioned some recommendations to the government to increase trade and investment between the two countries in the pharmaceutical industry. Roy said one of the challenges of Indian pharmaceutical firms in the Philippines is the slow approval of products registration by the Food and Drug Administration, or FDA. Among the recommendations of the IBF is implementing a premium charge to expedite the process of registration, which will help in clearing the backlogs for FDA approvals. Roy added that those products that are approved and registered in markets such as the United States and the European Union should be able to get their FDA approval in the Philippines within 6 months. Some of the products that are already registered in the US or European Union, that means that product has gone through a very stringent regulating approval. So these kinds of products should be approved in a fast rate basis, he said. He also said that for the Philippines to have access to cheaper medicines, Indian pharmaceutical firms urged the government to allow them to participate in biddings of the Department of Health.
ASEAN and Canada reaffirmed commitment to strengthen cooperation under their new Plan of Action 2021 to 2025 in areas of mutual interest at the 9th ASEAN-Canada Joint Cooperation Committee via video conferencing. Both sides highlighted the importance of continuing efforts to effectively implement the plan or the new Plan of Action 2021 to 2025 adopted at the ASEAN-Canada Ministerial Meeting in September last year. In this spirit, the meeting agreed to deepen collaboration in the areas of trade and investment, micro, small, and medium enterprises, development, public health innovation, including entrepreneurship and startups, digital economy, education, gender equality, women, peace and security, and connectivity. The meeting highlighted the importance of collaboration towards post-COVID-19 recovery and ensuring fair, equitable, and global access of vaccines. ASEAN also welcomed Canada's interest to contribute to the COVID-19 ASEAN Response Fund, as well as cooperation through initiatives such as the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework. Moving forward, both sides underscored the significance of enhancing economic relations and look forward to advancing discussion on a possible ASEAN-Canada Free Trade Agreement, which is also one of the priority economic deliverables of Brunei Darussalam's chairmanship of ASEAN this year.
Again, thank you very much, Crystal, for joining me today here in ASEAN in Focus. And have a great and safe week ahead of us.
You too, Alma. And that's the latest news in the ASEAN region. Thank you for joining us today. This is Crystal Ann Ballesteros from your EBC Cambodia Bureau. And we always live in interesting times.
Thank you, Crystal. And we'll see you tomorrow. I'm Alma Angeles. We live in interesting times.
Huwag ka nang malungkot, aking kaibigan, sa mga nangyari na di mo inasahan. Panahon nagdaraan, lalo ka lang nahihirapan.
Kapos sa yaman at may karamdaman,
may takot ang iyong puso't isipan, naiisip, nag-aalala,
nalulungkot sa iyong buhay.
Punasan mo ang luha, mata mo'y imulat, sa Diyos mo ilapit ang lahat. Kumapit ka lang, tumawag ka lang,
pumanaw